a Canadian radio sanctuary podcast.
Yes, I've been busted, did some time in the can. Some things don't work out just the way that you plan. Still love to sing. It's everything just to hear that guitar ring.
Chicago is your home. When did you leave there?
First time I came up to Vancouver from Chicago was May of '69, I think. I came up for a visit. I knew a girl that was up here and came up to say hello and take a look around, and I liked it a lot. And at that point, I was looking ahead to September of '69, thinking about what kind of school I might want to be in, because at that point, the only way to stay out of the armed services in the States was to have a student deferment. And I'd had a year of university and was looking for, I was a psychology major, and I was looking for something else. I'd always been interested in film. And they had a real good film school up here at VCC, an animation school, good teachers. I went back to Chicago in June and spent most of that summer traveling around the East Coast playing music, which I did for fun and for a living too. And then at the same time put together a film that I used to submit as my portfolio and was accepted at the film school up here. And so I actually first came up to live in Vancouver September of '69.
Is that one area you'd like to get into, is film or music for film?
Lately, yeah, I've been talking to a few other musicians. Rick Scott had a kids program on CBC and sort of fell prey to that CBC-itis, where if you've been involved, it's sort of a very depressing thing to have your creativity stamped on all the time. And SCTV has been reasonably successful with a lot of the stuff, both in Canada and the States and some other the other foreign markets. I think video is a very exciting thing, especially simulcasts and things like that, where you can get the video plus a tremendous audio signal. Yeah, I don't know, eventually. I'm thinking more along those lines. I did a movie score, which I very much enjoyed, about a year ago. There was a Dennis Hopper film called Out of the Blue, which is now touring Europe and doing very well, I hear, which I wrote all the music for and produced it and arranged it, with the exception of one tune, which was written by Neil Young. And I enjoyed that too, but again, at this point it doesn't jive with my career of touring and being a powder blues.
Hey, what about music in Vancouver? You were involved with it. Was it Uproar?
Wow, it actually goes back a good deal further than that. I think I played in some bands out of the art school in the fall of '69, and wound up playing in the first topless, bottomless club in Vancouver, which was called the Café Copenhagen on Main Street, which is run by Mark Derrick. God knows where he is. Yeah, and I played there until New Year's of 1970, where I decided to get out. In fact, there was a motorcycle gang fight in which 2 members were shot to death, and I ran out the back of the club with a 14-year-old stripper who was trying to save my ass from getting shot up. It doesn't sound like Vancouver, but it was pretty wild on the East End in those days. And then I hooked up with Tommy Chong of Cheech and Chong, and they had a comedy group called City Lights or City Works. I can't remember exactly. Tommy's dad owned the Shanghai Junk on Main Street, and which became the Kublai Khan on the corner of Main and Pender upstairs. It was sort of a stripper club. Rich came up, and they started doing sort of a forerunner to Cheech and Chong with 2 other girls, Maureen and Wendy. I just saw Wendy the other day. She remembers those days. She's now a mother of 2 large kids. But it was, a lot of the forerunners of the Cheech and Chong skits, and I was playing in the backup band for that, and also playing all the strip shows. In fact, there's so many people who've come out of the scene, like one of the black strippers that was working at the Shanghai Junk is the bit part player on Sanford and Sons. Like that Red Fox is always saying, I could have taken a picture of you and saved myself a trip to the zoo. I forget her name now. She used to put skulls on the floor and set them on fire and come out in a zebra skin and eat flames and stuff. And then after that, I had a group with Smile and Jack Smith called Orvaldorp, and that was the first record I put out. One side was Jesus Marijuana, and the other side was penned by me, a thing called Gutter Rat Man, which I'm sure warped the brains of a number of 6-year-olds. After that, I formed Uproar, right out of that group. That was sort of a power trio with Glenn Hendrickson on drums and Jeff Ridley on guitar at one point, and Pat Coleman later on. And we put out one single on GRT Records, which did very well nationally, and went on a number of national tours. probably the most memorable of which was the Cross Canada Frank Zappa tour of either 70 or 71, I'm not sure. My memory gets hazy that far back.
Is that a different drummer?
Different drummer was one side, and Look Who We Are was the flip side. And that was really enjoyable. I was playing bass and doing the lead singing in the band. And after that, God, I really don't know. I think I did so many things, so many different things just to try and stay alive. It was real hard making a living with Uproar. We would literally take a Friday night in Cranbrook and a Saturday night in Radium Hot Springs. And so I would leave Vancouver Thursday night and drive all the way until Friday night with the equipment in the van and the two other guys, because I was the only guy that had a license. And then we'd set up all our stuff, play, and then take it down and put it back in our truck and start driving to the next gig. And we would often do, whatever we could get, 3 days a week, and it was nothing to do 1,500, 2,000 miles a week. And the average pay would be maybe $300, so you'd spend $200 on the truck and have $30 each until next week. Cafe Copenhagen, when I was playing there, I used to make about $6 a night, and I'd play 6 nights a week, 5 hours a night. I worked at Izzy's Strip City. In fact, that was probably the first place I ever played music in Vancouver. That was when it was actually the old style burlesque. They actually had a catwalk out. They actually had a kick line, a chorus line. This is the old style burlesque. I haven't seen that since those years. And after Uproar, I worked a lot of clubs, a lot of different club bands, just trying, like everyone else was doing at the time, just trying to become more proficient at playing.
What happened first, Blue Wave Recorders or Powder Blues?
The idea for Blue Wave Recorders happened first, and Powder Blues sort of happened along the way, but they both sort of started maturing at the same time. I'd been interested in making records since, the first one I made here was 1970. I'd started, after I did my club internship in the early 70s, I started doing more and more demo work. I recorded demo tracks with Bim, and I recorded as a demo drummer for Jerry Doucette's first album, and recorded with Alexis, and recorded with Smilin' Jack Smith, and I did a long stretch with the Hans Stamer Band, which had a lot of good players in it. Robbie King taught me a lot about playing. Jeff Arrow played drums, Paul Burton played drums, Eddie Patterson was a guitar player for a while in the band. Wayne Kozak played all the horns in the band for the entire stretch that I was in it. I was on RCA Records, so I did a lot of recording with them too. And I just started getting involved in making records, and I wanted to have my own studio eventually. And it sort of started out as a small idea, and as I wanted less and less to compromise, it got more elaborate, and it finally wound up as it is today, which is a 24-track, what I think is pretty close to state-of-the-art right now.
When did Willie McCulder come down from Edmonton? When did you meet?
I'm not that strong on Willie's personal history. I know that he lived in Edmonton for a long while, and in the 60s he had a pretty hot band that had a number of singles out called Willie and the Walkers. Some of Willie and the Walkers' singles were produced by Norman Petty, who produced Buddy Holly. So Willie and Norman were friends, and Willie's actually, his producing experience goes back years before mine. I think what happened was the Walkers broke up, and Willie was just sort of gigging around Edmonton, and the Seeds of Time went up to Edmonton, and Willie'd been on a bender, just split up with his girlfriend, and wrapped his pickup truck around a lamppost. And Lindsay Mitchell from the Seeds of Time said, who's now with Prism, said to Willie, "Why don't you join the band and play piano?" And he did. He just hopped right in the band right there and then, pretty well. Left all his stuff in his apartment and took off with Seeds of Time. Wound up in Vancouver. I think I first ran into Willie about 1970. I'm not sure really. 74, maybe 75, somewhere in there. I was hanging out at Oil Can Harry's digging some of the jazz acts and blues acts, and Willie was running lights and occasionally playing a set by himself on piano solo. And I started talking to him one night at the light board, and we found out we had a mutual interest in the blues, and he asked me to come over one day after his gig. We went up to his pad, and it was amazing. It was an empty apartment with a little piece of foam on the floor, I think, and an electric Wurlitzer piano and a guitar. And that was it, man. There was nothing, no food, nothing. Yeah, so we started playing, and he played real good blues piano, like no one I'd heard since Chicago. It was a different kind of style. It was really Chicago blues style. So I said to him there, I remember saying it to him, I said, well, one day you and I are going to play in a band together. And then, 4 or 5 years later, lo and behold, we wound up in this nucleus of the Powder Blues.
Okay, Uncut was recorded, what was it now? I'm losing track here. A year and a half, 2 years ago?
No, I just ran into that problem the other day. My memory from long ago is good, but lately it's been getting much.
I think it was around Christmas 79.
Yeah, it was recorded in November 79, and we put it out on our own label. I guess it was out January, February, March of 80. We recorded it in November of 79 and released it on Blue Wave in about January of 80. And we sold it January and February, and then RCA took it over in March. By this time, which is August 81, we're at 200-some thousand copies with RCA. And then Thirsty Years was released July of 81. So it was like almost a year and a half between recording the first one and recording the second one.
Is that how high Uncut is now? 200,000?
Yeah, it's a little over 200. Yeah, double platinum. It's great. And Thirsty Years now has been out for 4 weeks, and we're at 160 or so thousand, which is, it took a year and a half to sell 200,000, and we've done 160 in 4 weeks. Sort of different. I'm not sure I like it as well. I think I like something that hangs on a little longer. This one seems to be just skyrocketing up, and I would imagine that at some point in a few months it'll do a skyrocket plummet too.
Not necessarily, though.
It might hang on, yeah. It's hard to say at this point. I like the new album better than I like the first album for a number of reasons. I don't know if you want me to get into that now.
Yeah.
Everybody was contributing to this one more so than the first. There was like a lot of co-writing on this one. Me and my brother wrote together. Willie and I wrote a lot together. Jack and Willie wrote together. David Woodward has a tune on it. And 9 out of the 10 tunes are originals by somebody in the band. And everyone has a lot of input on it. I also like it because I think the tunes are even more so specifically autobiographical. I like it because I see an evolution in the band that I always hoped was happening from the start, where we didn't fall into a formula or a rut or something. I can see that the music has changed over a year and a half, which makes me feel that maybe what I'm doing is right. If we're just doing the same thing and going through the motions, I don't think I'd like it very much. Although that proves to be successful in a number of cases. Although I don't want to mention specific names, but there are successful Canadian rock bands that have followed an exact formula, album after album, and after 5 years or 10 years they start to hit. I didn't really want to do that. This new album is more R&B. It's definitely a better produced album. I've learned an awful lot about the studio. The first album was really just luck for me. We had better equipment to work on. We had more time to do it. We had more toys that are real nice because so many people nowadays have got real good hi-fis, and it's nice to be able to make use of that equipment for them. Put things in those frequencies and have nice little sound effects and stuff. So we did that, although I think pretty subtly. I still tried to retain the live boisterousness of the band, just trying to make it sound. It's not produced in the sense of a 70s, like a King Crimson production or a Queen or somebody where everything is just layered and layered and layered. I like to be able to do everything that I do on record, be able to do it pretty well the same live. I wouldn't let the horn players add extra horn parts, even though maybe musically it would have sounded better, because I really wanted to be able to create anything that we put in the grooves.
I like the little touches like on Joyriding, when you say joyriding and the horn comes in, little hooks like that.
I like counterpoint. I think that's one thing that hurt the popularity of horns, is that they started to do things like Chicago or something, where the horns were always there underneath the words and everything. In all of the stuff I do, I try and use my horns almost like a counter-punching boxer. I really like to have as few times as possible where the horn lines and the vocal lines are overlapping one another. I really like that call and answer sort of thing, and that's pretty obvious on the first and the second record. R&B, it's Chicago, all the Chicago horn bands, or at least the black ones particularly, were like that when I was growing up.
On the new album, though, as you were saying, the production, you're happier with it, and it just seems to have a spark. It seems to be a much hotter. Each song seems to just jump out at you more than the first, I think, the first album. I can't put it in better words
Well,
than
that's
that.
nice of you to say so. I think that's real swell. I don't know if that's just sound quality or what.
I think it's a combination of the writing. It just seems to be, well, you sound like you're having more fun on this album than the first one, to my ears anyway.
Well, I can think of one reason. Most of this album was written in or around the time we were in the studio. It was just, we banged it off. And the first album, we'd been doing most of those tunes in clubs for about 6 months or more. And they were more settled in. And sometimes that freshness really gives you more life. You can put a little more life into the tunes.
Do you have any favorite cuts on the album?
Well, it takes me a long while. You know, they asked me that on the first album, and it took me maybe a year to really decide what my favorite cut was. And so it'll probably take me this long on this new album to figure out. There's some I like more than others, but they grow on you, you know. Like, at first, on the first album, I liked Sweet Little Girl because it was the one that the FM decided to pick up, the very first cut, because it was most like the others. And now I like it the least because I realized it's least like our style. What eventually wound up as my favorite on the first one is Hear That Guitar Ring, which I think is the best written tune on that album, co-written by me and my brother. And that's a true story about his experiences. But I wrote the music for it, and it works real well. On this album, I don't know. A lot of people really like Lovin', Kissin' and Huggin', which I thought, when I wrote it with Willie, was going to be the throwaway tune on the album. And that, I've gotten so many real good comments on that one. So it's hard. Secret Success I like a lot. Joyridin' I like.
You have definitely a strong blues sound, especially on Pink Champagne. I really like that song.
I had to beg Willie to let me put that one on the album because he really digs that song, and he thought that we could have done a better version of it. I like it because it's sort of rough. There's two sort of rough, bluesy things. There's Nothing But a Tease, which I like that in its own way because that was done completely live. I mean, we walked out on the floor, I sang it, we did the guitar on it right there and then. We just turned the lights all down in the studio and said, let's play like we play in a club somewhere. And we played the blues. We got done with it, and Willie said, well, gee, Tom, you're a hotter guitar player than that solo shows you off to be. Why don't you do the solo again? And I, respect his opinion a lot. I play off him an awful lot in terms of production. And I thought about it, and I said, that's what it was, and it doesn't, we're not trying to impress anybody. That's just the way we are, and it sounds exactly like we do, and let's leave it. And we did. So that one was just flat out. Woodward and the horns just walked in and played that figure right off the top of their heads, and that was that. And Pink Champagne is sort of, we worked on that one, but it still came out sort of like the old style from the 50s. So there's a few little bloopers in there, and it's okay, it's human.
What is the story behind Secret Success?
Well, my brother wrote it. I think I helped him with a few lines, but 90% of the words are his. And I did write some of the music and the horn parts for it. It's about that, especially I think I get it more than my brother, but he gets it too. Otherwise, he wouldn't have written the tune, where people think we're very successful and very wealthy. And we are successful in relative terms. In terms of all other Canadian bands, I think we're as successful as most, or as 90% anyway. There are a number that make more money than us. But we have recognition, and people like us and like our albums and come to our shows and give us the privilege of continuing to play. But a lot of people think we're rich, that we got loads of dough. And it's just not the case. Like there was a headline the other day in a local newspaper said, Lavin, where's your Mercedes? And I said, well, if I could afford a Mercedes, I might drive one. But I'm driving the same car I did 8 years ago. And it certainly isn't a Mercedes.
Now you're hitting the road again soon, and how long will that take, and where will you go?
I leave on the 26th, 5 days from now, and I open in Lethbridge at the Sportsplex, and we do. I should have my itinerary in front of me, but it's not in the office. We do about 46 shows in 43 days, and the way we do those extra 3 shows is when we go to Toronto, we do an outdoor, we play the Forum at Ontario Place, which is about 13,000 people outdoors, sort of covered though. It's really beautiful. Most of your listeners probably have seen it on the tube. Done some live concerts there with various people. and it's a great gig. And then immediately after that, we go to the El Macombo, and it's so small at the Elmo, it's like, I don't know, 400 or 500 people, that we do 2 shows a night. So we go on and do a show at 7:30, then they clear the house, and we go back and do another show at 11 o'clock at night. So we do 6 shows in 3 days. And we wind up on October the 4th or 5th in St. John's, Newfoundland. And from there, either we're lucky and we get to go home, or we're lucky and our record is so hot in the States that we have to go down and tour the States. And there's a bit of talk about going to England in December. I don't know whether that's going to happen or not. So that's pretty well the tour schedule from now on. It's a grind.
Coming from a city the size of Chicago, do you ever miss that faster pace where things get done like that?
Vancouver is my favorite city in the world, and it is slower. It's real frustrating, I think, in certain aspects when you're trying to accomplish anything in Canada. And I love Canada, and I feel just real lucky to be living here. But it's a real drag when you're trying to do business or anything, to have customs and duty hassles and border hassles and exchange hassles, and trying to get electronic parts will drive you insane. There's such a lack of the cornucopia of goods and services that you can acquire in Chicago with a phone call. I mean, just to have somebody come up and do really top quality noise analysis in a studio, you have to go to LA and fly somebody up and put them in a hotel and try to clear all their equipment through all this government bureaucracy. And I feel bad at that, but no, I don't. In most senses, I don't miss Chicago. There's certain things I get homesick for. Canadians don't know what a good hot dog is. And there is such a thing, you know.
They can be tasty, can't they?
Oh, absolutely. It's a meal. In New York, they eat how many million a day? I don't know. I've seen the statistics on it. 10 million hot dogs a day in New York alone. And, yeah, they're still creative.
Maybe if we get Major League Baseball here one day, they'll have a proper hot dog.
It's possible. I went to see minor league baseball, and you have to go down and get your own beer. I like it better when they bring it to you.
Thank you, Tom.
Sure. My pleasure.